Good morning, everyone. I feel like I'm waking up in like some alternate fucking timeline or something this morning. Last night, Jake Paul knocked out Ben Askren in the first round in under like 2 minutes or some shit, right? All right, so a lot to break down in this. First off, when the fight news got released like a couple months ago, I put a video out giving my thoughts on it, and I said in it basically, and this is true, Ben Askren, I still think it's true. Ben Askren probably has the worst hands in terms of like boxing mechanics, pure boxing mechanics in the history of MMA. I have never seen anybody participate in the sport where throwing a punch just does not come naturally to them. Like throwing punches does not come naturally to Ben Askren. None of the things that it's like watching CM Punk try to figure out MMA, right? Like none of the things that Ben Askren does on the feet are smooth. He doesn't have good head movement, no good footwork, and he's going up against this young kid who's been practicing exclusively for boxing, right? And you guys got to think too, like not only is Ben not naturally gifted with any striking prowess, but he's gone through an entire career winning all of his fights by wrestling and grappling with guys, right? Now, I want to caveat all this by saying, like, I'm talking shit on Ben Askren's hands. Like, there's no way. It is what it is. Ben Askren is a phenomenal fighter, right? He compiled an amazing record in MMA. He's one of the best grapplers to ever participate in it. He's an Olympic-level wrestler. But over the course of his MMA career, his entire objective was to get the fight to the ground. That means that going into this fight, right, he had to unlearn so many bad habits because everything that he did inside an MMA cage was just a means to an end. Like every punch that he threw was really just to close distance and maybe get close to the guy and grab him so he could put the fight where he wanted it, right? When you take that away from him and say, okay, now you're only going to strike. A, he's naturally bad at it. But B, he's been practicing things that aren't going to lend itself well to a boxing match for his entire career. He's 36 years old. He's coming off a hip replacement surgery. He retired from MMA. He's coming off a terrible knockout loss to Jorge Masvidal, right? He got clobbered by Robbie Lawler, so it's not like this guy hasn't been hit in the head before. And he's stepping in against a rangy, young, athletic kid who's only been focusing on boxing. This is my point, though. Jake Paul, the fact that he's exclusively been focusing on boxing, he's going to start developing all these fundamental habits and stuff over the course of the past 3 or 4 years that are going to lend itself very well to a boxing match, right? He's not unlearning anything. I know he wrestled in high school and stuff, but like, you got to think, Ben Askren has been trying to win a world championship or defend a world championship his entire career, right? Like his path to victory has been through MMA for however the decade that he fought, maybe more. So everything, like he has to unlearn all these bad habits and try to build new habits in just 3 months. Whereas meanwhile, Jake Paul is kind of like a sponge when he starts learning, right? Like he doesn't know anything about boxing mechanics. He never fought MMA, so he doesn't have bad habits to begin with. And you're just teaching him everything. And he's picking up on it a little bit easier, and he's had more years to kind of refine things and go through it. It was very obvious in there that Jake was a better boxer than Ben, right? The problem, though, is that this is what I said from the beginning, too. This is just a smart business move by Jake because the general public doesn't know that Ben Askren is maybe the worst striker in the history of MMA. The general public just knows that Ben Askren is an MMA fighter. And here's the headline from ESPN that I got this morning. It took less than 2 minutes for YouTube star turned boxer Jake Paul to KO a former MMA fighter in just his third pro fight. Yeah, he fought a guy who is the worst striker in MMA. I'm not even saying it like I'm saying it without a doubt. I really think he is. So Jake Paul didn't go in and beat somebody with any boxing pedigree. He beat a guy who doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. And now he's 3-0. And he gets to continue to push forward this narrative that I just beat an MMA fighter in a boxing match. I'm a real fighter. No, you're not, man. You beat Nate Robinson. I had no fucking clue what was going on. You beat a YouTube star, and you beat a guy who is just not good. Just not good at striking. You took away the only thing he's good at and beat him at the other thing that he's worst at. That means nothing. I mean, it means something in the sense that you made money and you got... It's a smart business move, and I'm not talking shit on Jake Paul. But the reality is that... You went in and beat somebody who doesn't have a fucking clue how to box, right? It would be like me, honest. This is how I think about it. Like, if you listen to Ben Askren, he'll even tell you he doesn't even really prepare for the striking part. He only prepares for grappling throughout like all of his training camps leading up to his fights, right? So to me, it's not exactly the same, but it's kind of similar to like a guy who got his purple belt after like 3 or 4 years, and a white belt walks into the fucking gym and he's been training for a few months and he's starting to get some mechanics down and he's starting to feel like he figures it out. And then the purple belt just comes in and steals your fucking soul. The purple belt shouldn't feel really good about that. Like Jake Paul's like making it this big thing, but it's like, yeah, but what happens when you get in there with somebody who's not even a pro boxer and just knows how to throw their hands around? You know, the first thought that came to my mind was, maybe because he was fighting last night, Kelvin Gastelum, dude. A guy who fought at 170, couldn't make the weight, a little too small for 170. Jake's at like 191, fought at 185 last night, and he's too small for the 185ers, and he has really crisp hands. A guy like that, guys, would fuck Jake Paul up. Like, fuck him up. I'm no doubt in my goddamn mind. What Jake Paul did last night was impressive in that he definitely has knockout power. But if you have knockout power and you're throwing your strikes against a guy who doesn't move his head and doesn't move his feet and stays just planted in place for you, 36 years old, a lot slower than you, a lot less agile, it's not going to be the hardest thing in the world to do if you've been training for it. Like, I'm pretty confident that if a white belt walked into the gym and was training for even 6 months, I'm going to be able to take him down and tap him out repeatedly at will, right? That's how I feel about Jake Paul. That was Jake Paul was a purple belt or a blue belt fighting a white belt last night, right? That's how I feel about it. All right, on to the next thing. Was the fight rigged? No. I might have already just said this. I don't believe the fight was rigged. I think Ben Askren is just that bad at boxing that it made Jake look that good. It looks fake. Ben is so bad that it looks fake. That's all it is. Ben is that bad of a boxer. Great fighter, terrible boxer. All right. Next, should the fight have been allowed to continue? Yes, I'm a purist. Like, I say that about a lot of things, right? Like, I believe in knees to down opponents. I believe in a lot of things. But yeah, I think the fight should have been allowed to continue. Ben looked okay to me, but when he got back up, he did stumble back into the ropes. And I think this part is almost just like, this is very humorous to me. I think when Ben settled back into his stance and started walking forward, the ref mistook the awkwardness in the way that Ben moves for being hurt. I think Ben was definitely rocked, but I think he could have continued. The problem, guys, is that I think that the outcome would have been the same, whether it was the second or third round. I think Jake was going to get it done. Like I said, the fundamentals were there. He was actually pretty composed. He wasn't blowing his load or wasn't blowing his wad early, like, right? He wasn't, he was in control of himself and his emotions, it seemed like. But Ben, man, I just think that his movement is so awkward and everything about him is so awkward that when he got up and, like, I don't think he was stumbling. I just think that's how Ben moves. His fighting stance is like an old man walking down the street with a fucking cane. So I think the ref mistook that a little bit. I think the fight could have been allowed to continue on a little bit longer, but I do think it would have ended the same way. And, one last thing that I want to say, and I'm like, again, I said all that stuff about Jake Paul fight. If Jake Paul fought, I don't have like striking experience. Jake Paul would like fuck me up, right? Like, that's what I mean. I'm intelligent enough to realize that the guy knows how to box better than most people, right? He can throw combos, blah, 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 blah. Like, if he fought an average person without striking experience, he would win. But the problem now is for Jake Paul, you're going to get thrown into what he's doing with his career is actually very smart, guys. And it's not so much different from what regular boxers do. Think about what they do when they get a prospect. They groom him, right? In boxing. In MMA, you get thrown to the wolves a little bit, but in boxing, they make you fight these guys that are favorable matchups for you at the time and teach you how to deal with different things, and they build you up to be a world champion, and your record is padded. And one loss on your record in boxing it fucks you, right? So what Jake is doing is essentially the same thing that promoters do for talented upcoming boxers. He's just approaching it from a different angle, right? He's coming in from the YouTube side of things. So what does he have to do if he wants to make this a real thing and manifest it? He's got to approach it the same way. He's got to cherry pick his fights. He's got to make the fights easy. He's got to make the fights winnable. He's got to make it so that he's continuing to have success, because that's what's going to build, right? That's what's going to build all this revenue for him and build all this hype around his fights. What he's doing is intelligent, and it's not so far off from what boxers do. He's just doing it at a much lower scale to start, right? Maybe he could transform into a good boxer. Maybe, I don't fucking know. But my point is that you can't get too upset at him for what he's doing. Like, it's annoying as fuck. He's annoying as fuck. But, like, you can't get mad at him for doing essentially what boxers have been doing for years. He's just approaching it from a different angle and starting at a way lower level than most of them, right? But if you want to break into the space and this is what you want to do, it's a damn smart way to do it. All right, so in summary, Ben Askren, worst striker in MMA history, in my opinion.
Didn't learn a lot about, you learned a lot in Jake Paul's fundamentals, but you didn't really learn about, is he gritty? Can he get in a fight? Can he beat somebody can he bust, I don't know, man. I just don't think you learned a lot about Jake Paul last night. I think you have to see him get in a real fight. You have to see things get difficult, and you have to see how he handles that type of adversity. Was the fight rigged? No. Ben Askren is just that bad at boxing that it looked fake. And 3, should the fight have been allowed to continue? Maybe, but I think the outcome would have been the same either way. So let me know what you guys thought down in the comments. I felt like I was in a fucking fever dream all last night. People smoking weed on the fucking thing that I'm watching. Gastelum and Whitaker are about to fight 2 of the best middleweights in the world. And here I am sucked into this fucking Triller Fightclub pay-per-view between a YouTube star and a former Olympic wrestler. Oh, Jesus Christ, man. It's like, what the fuck is going on? Just when you think 2021 is when shit's going to start getting back to normal, this happens, right? Anyway, guys, I appreciate you tuning in. Let me know what you thought of the fights. Let me know what you thought of all the craziness. Let me know who you think Jake Paul should fight next, because it's got to be somebody somewhat legitimate who's at least proven that they know how to throw their hands around, right? And yeah, have a good day. I think that's all. Bye-bye.